Welcome back. Today's video is about the recent Copaganda videos that police are perpetuating all across the United States. Police seem hell-bent on not only telling but showing people just how dangerous their occupation is. This is probably in part due to actual facts and statistics. For the most part, police aren't included in the top 20 deadliest occupations. That being said, police have been ramping up their propaganda with the fake fentanyl overdose videos. I know what you're thinking, Johnny 5-0. Did you just call out these videos as fake? Yes, I did. But more importantly, medical professionals, such as doctors, are the ones who started it. Let's hear from actual doctors regarding these videos, shall we?
You may have seen a recent video circulating about a San Diego police officer who apparently OD'd after touching some fentanyl powder at a scene of a crime. Hearing about this really pisses me off because it happens every few months where some sort of video about a police officer overdosing on fentanyl by touching it circulates, and then everyone panics because they think that they can die by touching fentanyl. This is not true. And I already have a video and a post on Instagram explaining how this isn't true and how we've debunked the myth that you can touch fentanyl and die, but let me go over it again just to hammer the point home. Normal street fentanyl cannot be absorbed through the skin. It just can't do it. The way the biomechanics work, it just cannot be absorbed through the skin. It's absorbed through the bloodstream, which is why people inject it. Now, the reason this officer probably passed out and not overdosed is because of something called the negative placebo effect, also known as the nocebo effect. Basically, you think something bad's gonna happen, so something bad happens. A simple way to disprove this video would have been to get a blood sample from the officer and see if there were opioids in his system. They didn't do that. I wonder why.
Fentanyl is a synthetic opioid. Things like morphine and heroin are opiates that are made from the poppy plant versus fentanyl is a synthetic made in a lab opioid that hits the opioid receptor. It's really potent, it's really strong. We use it in the hospital all the time. It's a really safe drug when used properly by doctors and nurses, but when it's really concentrated and people are using it at home, they can accidentally overdose very easily. It's a common myth that just by touching fentanyl, you can absorb it, but you really can't. And it's important that we emphasize and clarify that. It's so poorly absorbed through the skin that pharmaceutical companies actually spent millions and millions of dollars to develop something called a fentanyl patch. It's a very special way to deliver fentanyl in a patch that you wear. And even then, it's not very well absorbed. But definitely the powder or pills or anything that you find, not really absorbed through the skin. People who have an opioid toxicity, opioid overdose that ingested some fentanyl or injected fentanyl, they have minutes, maybe just moments to live. So pausing, putting on whole body suit, PPE, or waiting for other people to arrive means that person might die. So we really need to intervene and help them as quickly as possible. That might be by doing CPR. It might mean by giving the antidote, which I carry with myself all the time, Narcan, naloxone. So we have just moments to do that. And so waiting because we're concerned about skin exposure is not correct. Inhaling fentanyl can technically cause an overdose, but it doesn't get aerosolized very well. So fentanyl has something called a low vapor pressure. So you really can't aerosolize it without some very complex mechanism. You can play with it, you can technically throw it up in the air and have it fall, and you really won't breathe significant amounts in. So it's not really dangerous to walk in a building that has fentanyl in it. You don't need a fancy respirator or anything like that. So I told a friend of mine recently who's a paramedic about this because she was really worried about getting exposed to fentanyl. And the relief on her face when I clarified that it's not really something she needs to worry about, that she's not going to walk into a building and touch fentanyl or breathe it in and have something bad happen to her, it was such a relief. She told her family and they were relieved. So I think it's really important that we make sure everyone understands how this works. When someone overdoses on fentanyl or another opioid, their breathing will slow. They'll eventually become unconscious and their breathing may stop altogether, and that's how it's deadly. If you find someone who's overdosed on fentanyl or another opioid, you should call 911. And if you have Narcan, naloxone, you should administer to them. The two most common ways it's administered are intranasally through the nose, and then also an injection. And in California, you can get Narcan, naloxone. Anyone can get it without a prescription. Walking into a space, evaluating a person who's overdosed on fentanyl, calling 911, even doing CPR and definitely administering Narcan are all 100% safe to do.
Now some disturbing video of a sheriff's deputy falling down after briefly handling fentanyl. But some medical experts are not sure this is for real.
It's dramatic body cam video of a deputy sheriff collapsing to the ground. He and his partner were making a drug arrest when he suddenly has trouble breathing.
I got you, okay? I'm not gonna let you die. I'm not gonna let you die.
The deputy was believed to be suffering from an accidental overdose after being exposed to the deadly opioid fentanyl.
I need Narcan!
His partner began administering Narcan, a medication that works like magic to block the effects of an opioid overdose.
Fire department got there, put him on the gurney, his eyes rolled back in his head, and he started to OD again. And he was ODing the whole way to the hospital.
The San Diego Sheriff's Department released the footage to warn against the dangers of fentanyl. Fortunately, the deputy survived and made a full recovery.
I'm Deputy David Fivey, and I almost died of fentanyl overdose.
But now the video is being met with skepticism by some medical experts who say it is impossible to overdose on fentanyl simply through airborne exposure.
I can tell you with essentially 100% with surety that this was not fentanyl poisoning. When people get fentanyl poisoned, they don't just collapse like that. And not moments after an exposure.
He says the deputy's reaction was likely caused by stress, not the drug itself. And while the PSA was well-intentioned, Dr. Lewis Nelson warns the misinformation could be harmful if police hesitate responding to similar calls.
I'm very concerned that they're not going to respond to somebody who actually needs medical assistance because they're fearing risk to themselves.
I'm not gonna let you die.
This is really a sensitive topic that no one, including the medical community, is trying to discount the danger our law enforcement officers face every day. I took this situation to two of the world's most renowned experts on fentanyl. These doctors literally wrote the studies about this drug and its effects. They insist, even after watching this video, it wasn't an overdose.
There's just no practical way in an outdoor environment that could happen.
Dr. Lewis Nelson of Rutgers Medical School co-published a prominent study saying passive fentanyl exposure is nearly impossible, meaning you simply can't overdose by coming in contact with it. He says a small dose wiped from a sleeve or inhaled wouldn't cause an overdose.
You've seen TV where they put out a line or you got to have a good amount to get in your body. You're not going to get a little powder on your hand and put it in your nose. You're not going to get sick from that.
Toxicology experts use the body camera video released by Tavares Police Department to support their analysis. While medical emergency is indeed happening, they say it's not consistent with that of an overdose.
She's walking out of the car, right? When you have a fentanyl overdose, when you have an opioid overdose, you don't have postural tone. You're not up. You're unconscious. Your breathing is slow. Your eyes are closed. Right? We see her. She's sitting up at one point. She says, "My chest hurts so bad." Opioid toxicity, you're asleep. You're unconscious.
Officer Bannock spoke with Fox 35, believing the Narcan is what saved her life.
Narcan only works to reverse opiate overdoses. It does not work to get you out of an anxiety attack.
While both doctors say it was a good idea to use Narcan while assessing the situation, they don't believe it's what brought her back.
It's not consistent with Narcan, with naloxone, for you to get it and then have a good response and wake up and then immediately go back down again. That's just not consistent at all.
Both doctors believe Officer Bannock was having a reaction to what happened. They just don't think it was an overdose.
Because it seems so real. And I think these are all legitimate concerns. I don't think anybody's trying to pull a fast one here. I think these people really believe they're exposed because this is what they've been told happens.
So if you're the curious type as I am, the next question is, what happens if one administers Narcan, naloxone, to someone not suffering from an opioid overdose? Again, let's hear from the doctors themselves.
Naloxone or Narcan, which is the most recent addition to our bare bones basic emergency kit, is used to treat opioid overdose, which in the United States today has become an epidemic, which is the reason we added this to the emergency kit. If a person is suffering an overdose of a narcotic, naloxone is the absolute appropriate drug to administer. However, if I gave naloxone to anybody else, somebody who is not on opioids or addicted to opioids, it would do nothing. It's a very, very safe drug in that, in other words, you basically can't use it wrong. A person who needs it, narcotic overdose, it saves her life. If somebody doesn't need it and you give it to them, nothing significant is going to happen. So it's a very safe drug.
My take on this latest round of Copaganda is that police, especially after all the violence against protesters during the George Floyd riots, need to regain their hero status in the eyes of the public. Please comment below what your thoughts are behind this latest ridiculousness being perpetrated by our heroes in blue. Thanks for watching this video. Memberships are available on the channel. Hit the like button, subscribe if you like the content and want to find your way back. And I appreciate all of you. Thanks for being here. We'll see you in the next video.